Okay, we've done the introduction in part 1. Now we're going to do part 2, and that is the dismantling of the chassis, the platform chassis itself, to get it to the point where it's ready to be swapped out with the replacement motherboard, which is sitting right here. This motherboard is a newer one, and it is be able to do all the things that we want it to do. It's important to understand the difference between a 720 and a 720DX, because it has a specialized shielding and raise bar for some of the components involved with this particular chassis. So here, as you can see, we have obstacles in the way that are impeding here and here, the fan bar and so on. So I will remove them per pause so that you can see what this will look like with the motherboard principally the only thing on the base of the system. So to give me just a minute and you'll see the actual setup slowly change and reduce in the peripherals that are on top of the motherboard so we can free it up and get it off of this chassis. Stand by. Okay, so what we've done first is we have taken the fan bar out, and as you can see, the interface is involved with the fan bar. And it's basically square block fans, double layer type. And we're going to take that guy out of the equation. We're just going to set him right there. Now the good news is the drive chassis array and the assembly support array with the SAS connector interfaces do not have to be worked with because they run back into the actual controller interface itself. What we do see a problem with is, of course, the fact that we still have these power feeds out here, which have to be disconnected here, here, and here, and also some supplicant replacements here, as you can see, that need to be removed to free up the angle bar here to pull the power supply assembly out on the I/O trays. So we'll do those next, and you should see quite a change in the next pause. Be right back. Okay, so now you see that the I/O edge cards, that's these little cards here, which contain the PCIe-X series or a PCIe series connector edges, or a mix of both, because if you look there, you can see a variety of different types of connections. That is now missing. Those are all out of the place. We also have taken out the SAS cable interfaces for the front and to the back, so that that's out of the equation as well. We will next be working on removing the quad NIC, getting that out of the chassis, and pulling the base array out as well for the power supplies and the drive assembly. And that will almost, if not for the most part, free up the bulk of this particular motherboard's connection and interfaces. You'll notice here also that there are pull points. This is a pull point. This is a pull point is here. You'll need those as you go through the process of releasing the motherboard so that it's free and clear. You're also going to need a specialized tool in regards to this that will carry the forked tip or the torque tip on it, such as that. It will fit into the slots at which you're working with. They are not Phillips, so don't make the mistake of thinking that they are. But there are also, by the way, some Phillips screwdrivers as well, or screwdriver heads, I should say, right there, and as well as the CPU, which will need Phillips. But some of these interfaces are torqued for a reason, and they don't want you to really mess with them. So for this particular series of exercises, we're going to leave that in play, at least for now, until we know that we are good to go. So with that, the next step will be the removal of the heat shields of the processors, and those will be the heat sinks themselves. We'll take those off, we'll get this freed up, and it should allow us to get to the point where we can remove the motherboard. Okay, so now we are at the base level. We've got our 2-core processors here. They are Xeon series 5600s, I believe, 12 cores each, so a 24-core processor stack between the two of them. You notice that the RAID interface bus is gone, and that is cleared out. That looks like this over here. Small little logic piece, that which will go into the new motherboard, but it acts as your cache and RAID and battery buffer for your support for your discs. You will also see that the NIC is now missing. That's what this looks like. It's a quad NIC with 2 stacked cards on board, and that's been removed. And of course, these are the heat sinks. Now, these are lateral heat sinks with heat pipes in them. If you look in there, you can see them. And make sure that when you get to use these, again, you've got to completely remove all the compound and clean it successfully off with a base chemical combo like these. First step and then your second step. Clean off the actual processors as well as the heat sinks. Put fresh on every time. I wouldn't necessarily go overboard in buffering the CPU stacks, the copper part, because it just doesn't need it really. You just don't get that much back from it, even though some people say, what's a 5-degree variance? With these motherboards, nothing. Give me 25-degree variance, that's something. But really, it's a no-nonsense strategy in regards to how this board is going to be able to support, run, and do quite a bit, and it will rarely ever throttle down. That should never be your problem. So what's going to happen is this is going to come to the conclusion of part 2. The next part, the new motherboard will be put in, the processors will be transferred, the heat sinks will be cleaned, the subcomponents will be added. Nothing else will be added, just strictly the motherboard and its baseline components, so that I can test it and make sure it works well. By the way, as you're doing stuff like this, make sure you take the time and take pictures of how things were before you take it all apart, because pictures really genuinely tell you where those interfaces really are and where they need to go back, because sometimes you can cross them over and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that your wires are going in the right places and that your interfaces are doing correctly and you've got them tagged in the right setup so that they're doing what they need to do. Even though there isn't that much wire as much when you deal with servers as there would be with a PC, nevertheless, it's the little things that can get you. Anyways, this is part 2 signing off. I'll see you in part 3. Bye.